Hi, and welcome to Table Talks. I'm your host, Janell. We are sitting down with an experienced healer and guide, Steve Nobel, who has been guiding individuals into discovering and understanding their role as a starseed. Well, we even get to explain, well, what is a starseed if you don't know already? What is the density or what could be causing the density of the 3D world and the shift that we're now experiencing into 5D. What does that mean? And some more information, really useful information in understanding where we at as a universal energy and planet. I'm glad you're here. I love this conversation with Steve. So grab your coffee or your tea and let's start our conversation with Steve. Welcome, Steve. I'm so glad to have you and honored to have you here on our platform, Table Talks. You have been in the world of energy for 30 plus years. So I am really looking forward to getting your perspective, the shifts that you've been honored to be a part of personally and observe. So I just see that when we can look across the timeline from here to here, we learn so much about where we're going. And I
Yeah.
feel like you've got some great wisdom in that with that perspective that you hold. But before we jump into that, I would love to hear and appreciate to hear your journey. How did this awakening start for you?
It all began in my mother's womb. I popped out into this very ordinary family in London, working class family. And my parents have no spiritual, religious interests, aspirations. You know, they were in the UK post-war children, really. They went through the Second World War, the Blitz, evacuated. So they had these kind of post-war values, which was work hard. You know, Britain was being rebuilt, as was much of Europe, and my mother was into the rationing thing, cupboards full of tins of stuff. So this was their mentality. As a young kid, I was very interested. I think my first experience of something very alternative probably was Doctor Who. I remember seeing the first ever showing of Doctor Who. It might have been 1963 or 1964. And I looked at it and I was like, what is that? You know, time travel. And this was something in me went, whoa. And it was so popular, the first episode. It was all in black and white in those days, all black and white, that they reshowed the first episode the following week. There was so many people requested it. And I followed that avidly for a number of years. Uh, I didn't have any words for spirituality, but had lots of interest in graphic comics, superheroes, sci-fi, anything like that. I loved it. When Star Trek came along, I think I was 13 when I saw Star Trek, the first ones. And again, it was like Mike, and I subsequently found out that Gene Roddenberry, sat in a number of channeled classes with Seth, who was channeled by Jane Roberts. But I just was an avid, I just loved that, the Boldly Go and all of that. So here I was. It was tolerated by my family as a child, as a young teenager. But as I grew up, it was less and less tolerated. It was kind of get real, get in the real world. My father, get in the real world. I don't think he ever said it, but he might have said it. But it was kind of get a real job, get a proper job. I was studying for A levels at school, high school, I guess, maybe in America equivalent, pre-university. My father just wanted me to get a job. So in the end, I just left school and went into the city of London, banking, international banking. And by this time, I'd given up searching. I was searching in all kinds of places, spiritual organizations, yoga, martial arts, Zen, macrobiotics. Got into that for 2 years very intensely. And then I just thought, you know what? I'm not finding what I'm looking for. So I gave up, became normal, had two children, got married, had two children, get the right order. And then my father died in 1991, and it felt like something broke, some spell broke, that I felt free to go and follow my path. And very rapidly, I encountered synchronicity, which I had no word for, but it was just like one thing leading to another, pointing to another, a book, a person, whatever it was. And within 6 months, I found practically all of the teachers and organizations which was going to be meaningful for me for the next 20 years. Um, and my marriage then dissolved after a couple of years. My ex-wife was she still is quite an ardent Catholic, and she was not very happy with my interests. So, and then I went on a big journey of discovery. I got involved in a spiritual organization in London. I became a director of that organization for 13 years. I eventually left that organization, had a bit of a dark night of the soul for 6 years. So it was more than a bit of a dark night. And then started this. I woke up one morning and I got told, a voice told me, you've got to start talking about Starseeds and Ascension. And I was really like, oh my goodness, it's not really what I want to do. So I was kind of very resistant for a few weeks. I'm like, but then I thought, you know what? I think I should just say yes. I'm just going to say yes to what I'm being given. So that's what I've been doing, saying yes ever since.
Beautiful.
Following the signs, following the impulses, and gradually this building sprang into life. I mean, I learned to trust spirit in my last business because I didn't really have any idea about how to hold a business. And so I just learned to meditate and ask, what do I do now? And they gave me everything I needed to make the business successful, abundant, back on track. And so I kind of knew how to do that bit. Just listen and just follow. So that's what I've been doing.
And that's where a lot of us struggle. It's that sitting into the heart and listening and trusting. We just did a conversation the other day about that. It's like how much we've trained. I'm going to get off track a little bit and then I'll bring myself back. But that's just key. I mean, we've trained our brains to think and process and be logical and all these structures that we create in our brain and study and all that. And it's created this block here. And here you're talking about I learned I didn't know how to build, but I learned how to listen. I'm like, yeah, like that's
Yeah.
key.
Took me many years when I first heard about there are guides and angels and your higher self. I was like, really? And you can hear them. And I'm like, how do I hear them? How can I? And for a long time, I'm trying to hear them. Like, where are they? I can't hear anything.
Mm.
But I learned you first, usually for most people, is you feel them mostly.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would ask a question and feel into the answer. Took me a long time to get the subtleties. It's a bit like 50 words for snow by the Inuit. It's a bit like we're learning a new language. Whereas we can think, as you say, overthink, and we're kind of top heavy left brain. Our brains are kind of pulling us left ways, where intuition is more the right, and it's more heart, and it's more body and more feeling. So I think for men especially, learning to connect with body and feelings is more tricky than for women with a strong feminine energy, who already have a stronger connection to body and feelings. So
Mm.
it's learning the language of body and feelings and learning, should I go left or right? And it was really literally at the beginning, I was even asking my higher self, which way do I go now, left, right? Or when I was in my last corporate job, do I resign or stay? It was kind of those kind of questions and getting the answers.
Nice.
Sometimes the answers would come in signs. Sometimes the answers would be a deep inner knowing like a flash. But it took practice to open that channel and to read, when am I fooling myself? When am I thinking, I think, you can see, I think that's what they're telling me, rather than I'm feeling go left or feeling go right.
Mm.
Because with the logical mind has been so over amplified. It's
Yeah.
been put on a pedestal and praised by every corporate power in
Everything.
the world that
Yeah.
goes, we worship you, we will give you more money if you've got a big left brain.
Yeah.
And so people with right brains are the kind of poor poets in the gutter, or the occasional creative actor or actress or musician who's managed to scramble to the very top of their field, because there's a lot of struggling actors and musicians, of course. But so it's kind of, the world generally tends to praise and reward the left brain people. So here we go into a new field, like, well, I'm going into a new zone around what is intuition, what is my internal GPS, how do I know the signs, how can I read, when am I fooling myself? Because the ego, our mind, soon gets to hear, oh, he's listening to signs. we learn and they learn the language. The ego learns the language. And
Mhm.
in the early days, my ego would speak in the words that my guides would use, and I'm like, but eventually I go, I'm not going to be fooled. I can feel the difference. Again, it's a little bit of a subtlety, and learning the language and then trusting it and amplifying it and following. And with intuition and trust in intuition comes flow. We're learning to flow rather than struggle and suffer and get stuck, because our intuition is the most basic thing that we encounter when we're on the spiritual path. We've got to master what is my intuition, what is guidance. If we don't master that, then everything else gets a bit wibbly wobbly, as they say in Doctor Who.
It
Uh,
wibbly wobbly. I love Doctor Who. Isn't it that just like an amazing
yeah,
series? And is it, I'm finding that, and then I'm going to bring us back, but I find that it's the thing that comes first. Before my brain jumps in and says, oh, ah, e, ah, the thing that pops in first is pretty reliable to be my
yeah,
intuition.
yeah. And most people ignore the intuitive flash. I've heard so many times, I knew I shouldn't take that job. I knew I shouldn't have dated that guy, but I overrode my intuition because it sounded like a good idea. The proposal sounded so good. He looked so good. The job looks
Mhm.
so nice and flashy. So there again, the brain and the mind gets, oh, flashy.
Yeah,
Whereas the body goes, oh, no, no, there's warning signs. I ain't going there.
yeah.
And we're learning to heed the warning signs and to know when our intuition is actually warning us. And it will warn us if we're ready to listen. Of course, if we're not listening to our intuition doesn't speak to us. If we're not listening to the higher self doesn't bother to speak to us, really. We have to, I think with the awakening process, it's we awaken, go, I want to connect, I want to feel, I want to know, I want to go up, I want to, and with that desire comes a response. But usually, the higher self may tap us on the shoulder a few times, but we have to kind of actively go, okay, I'm listening. And then the phone calls start to come back. The communication starts to come. Hey, he's listening. Finally, let's call him.
Let's talk to him again. Let's connect.
Yeah,
And in this, you said you're seeing a shift. And you've had this beautiful observation post, is what it pictures the picture in my mind, is you've seen from your perspective this awakening, the Star Wars. That's, to me, feels like it's not an accident that these channels, these shows came at the time they did, because so many, excuse me, I got a tickle happening in my throat. So many were starting to awaken and connect to that as a truth.
yeah,
And slowly in increments, there's been kind of a climb like this as things have shifted and people are connecting to this truth. And now it's like we're seeing this. But
yeah.
so from your perspective, what are your observations as the shifts have happening? What have been the different sequences rolling through? I need a drink, excuse me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm going to have a sip of tea too. Uh, well, I think in terms of what's happening now, we have to look back a few years, back to the end of World War II. World War II was an important moment. And one reason for that was nuclear bombs were detonated. And that created a bit of a stir in the universe. Um, in the 50s, uh, there was a surge of films and magazines and comics about sci-fi, spaceships, aliens. There was a whole massive shift of interest. The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original film was 1953, I think. And there was this kind of thing of we're being contacted, this idea that there's life out there interested to contact us. But a lot of stuff started to move in the 50s. And then the 60s, there was a whole explosion of spirituality, flower power. The whole thing of people putting little flowers in guns of soldiers. In America, the whole thing of the Vietnam War and the reaction to it and all of this. And there's this whole movement of spirituality, free love, and is love ever totally free? We don't know, but there was that idea of free love, and then it kind of morphed into the 70s with teachers coming along and channels coming along. The Seth material which was really huge in the 60s. One of the first major channels was channeled by Jane Roberts, and there were others coming in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. 70s and 90s, a lot of spiritual teachers, a lot of movements coming up, organizations springing up. 2000 was a major millennial, it was a major shift point for me. Because up to that point, spirituality seemed light and fluffy. And even the world seemed kind of, to me, I mean, the world is never light and fluffy, but there was a turning in 2000. It was almost like the forces running the planet kind of got wind of a spiritual revolution shift. And they were like, hang on a minute, you know. And this is just my personal experience, that there was a lot more psychic interference that started around the millennium for starseeds, lightworkers. In the outer world, it culminated in events such as 9/11, which to me was a manufactured event to keep the world in a low frequency vibration. I mean, yes, there are strategic reasons for it as well, but it's also to keep the world in a low frequency vibration. To create war is a great way of keeping the world in a low frequency, as we see now. You know, the forces at play are again doing two major wars going on the planet. There's more than two, but two major ones that we're aware of in the West, you know, the Middle East and the Ukraine. These are keeping the world in a low frequency war that does that. So then there was this movement from 2000, steady shifts, steady, it was like the light being opposed more by the dark, the light meaning our awakening, personal and collective awakening. And when I say dark, I mean those forces who are quite happy with the way things are, who are not comfortable with the world shifting too much, don't want, you can call them ultra conservative. That's a very polite way of talking about them. They're not really that. But, you know, for people who don't like the term dark, you can think of them, we're going to keep things the way they are. And 2012 was this major trigger point that was talked about by, you know, perhaps the Mayan prophecy talked about that point, but certainly 2012, this galactic alignment shift. And a lot of people were saying when 2012 comes, the world's going to change dramatically. I mean, I remember having crazy conversations with friends going, you know, the day after, everything's going to shift. And I'm like, really? You know, this was after, I think, the Allied forces invaded Iraq. I said, really? You think that in one day, that whole thing is going to be suddenly healed? It's going to take decades. But what that 2012 was a trigger point, a decision point for humanity. Do we go up in terms of vibration and light, or do we go down in terms of what happened before on the planet a long time ago? There's been a number of these points, choice points. Atlantis was another one where the planet went, way, we can go down. And the Atlantean trigger point was a terrible shift down in dimensions. So suddenly the planet just dive bombed down in vibration. This is where we've been for thousands of years, this low three-dimensional, 3D dense place because of what happened back then. But humanity hasn't always been a dense, disconnected race. It was a fifth dimensional, very connected, very spiritual race, but you have to go way, way back. You're talking like Lemurian back.
I was just going to say Lemurian energy. Is that where you would
Yeah,
go?
Lemurian. And of course, I think there are other civilizations as well, but Lemuria is the one that we most know about. And it was by and large a very beautiful, very feminine civilization, very goddess orientated. And it was at that point when Lemuria decided to end that the energy of the goddess started to decline on the planet. And then eventually with Atlantis gave rise to patriarchy, the rise of the fathers or rules of the fathers, you know. And we've been suffering for a few thousand years under this pyramidical masculine system rule, whereas the old feminine systems were very circular or spiral. The masculine is very pyramidical, and you can still see in the US dollar bill, you know, you got the pyramid, and with that disconnected bit at the top, you know, the ones who are in the know, the eye of the Illuminati, who have all, you know, who believe they know, the illuminated ones, if that's what they call themselves, which they're not really, but they do tend to know more than the human collective, who are pretty sleepy, really. So here we are in 2024. Gosh, time is like, goodness. And we're heading probably for another shift. There's a number of collective shifts where I feel the energy coming from the sun, our local sun, is sending waves of light out, shifts that people are feeling. I don't really believe we're going to have one major, like they talk about the event. I don't know if you've heard of this, where there'll be a flash and everything changes. I don't really believe in that. But I think we're going through a number of waves where more light is hitting the planet. And 2025 sounds like it's going to be another marker. But the major one next is 2030 to 32 is going to be a major shift for the planet in light, where more old souls will be incarnating, I believe. Because this is the problem actually on the planet. We have old souls, lightworkers, starseeds, who've been around the block many times, who are kind of seen a lot of this before. And you have a lot of young souls who are like, yay, oh look, a planet, let's do what we let's trash
Mm-hmm.
it. It's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
bit adolescent. Let's trash it. Let's
Mm-hmm.
throw plastic in the oceans and see what happens. And it's kind of like, really? It's very short-sighted. But more old souls are going to be incarnate. Of course, that will shift the whole planet, because the problem is of the planet, every problem relates to consciousness, really. Everything, even, pollution, war, poverty, it's all a problem of consciousness. As the planet raises in consciousness, all those problems will be shifted and move out, actually. So,
I was doing a channel, time flies. So was it a month ago? Maybe. And it was talking about the tipping point. It's like
yeah,
there's been several tipping points, and you were just describing those. It's like with the Lemurian season and the Palladian season, and then we can see these seasons within our human existence as well, where there's been tipping points. And they said they can tip either way. And he says, we're at another tipping point. And I'm wondering if that's what you're feeling into for 25, and or they could be futuristic into because I've heard that as well, into that next marker, would you say 2030? But they
2030,
said
yeah.
we're at a tipping point, and it's like the light workers is we're holding space for the planet, and as a collective healing ourselves, healing generationally, that this is infusing into Mother Gaia and throughout galactical energies. This is infusing love, and that can support the tipping into light.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I think the decision's been made to tip into light. That was the choice made at 2012. And it seems like all channels are saying that that choice was made positively. Thank goodness, we've made the positive choice. But if you think that this planet has been dark for a long time, dark as in terms of the young adolescent souls doing what they want to do with the planet, and
Mhm.
it's been a bit trashed, to be honest. Let's be honest, the planet's been a bit trashed. And there's a lot of karma that has to be cleared, ancestral, personal karma with the planet, probably for a lot of us. And we're shedding layers of the onion, and it doesn't happen in a weekend workshop.
No.
Would
It's
be
collective
nice.
over time, right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I see that too. It's over time in the collective energy. How do you define starseed? In case those that are joining us on this conversation, they're going, okay, what's a starseed? Let's give them a picture.
The starseed. Well, I heard the term first of all through a channel called Ra. He wrote a number of books called the Ra Material. Ra called starseeds wanderer souls, and what that means is, well, take a back step. The soul is multidimensional in nature, meaning this is not the one lifetime. We live many lifetimes. This is not the only plane of existence. This is one plane of existence out of many. This is one universe out of many. This is one planet out of many where life exists. And so the soul is multidimensional, and the soul can experience lifetimes in many planes. So in the physical universe, we can experience life on Pleiades, life on Orion, life on Sirius, life on Arcturus, life on all of these different systems that hold life. And eventually, uh, the star seed comes to this planet for two main reasons. The main reason is service, but the second reason is growth. Whereas most young souls are on the planet primarily for growth, although it might be very slow for them, and eventually service might happen. There's karmic service. Every soul on the planet does engage in karmic service. Even having a child is karmic service. That's a massive karmic service. But the kind of service I'm talking about for starseeds is more of a bigger holding space for a community, a planet, doing a major piece of work. Like we're public, we're going public, we're trying to inform, we're trying to uplift, and so that is a service that we're here for. So we go through our own growth, and the growth doesn't stop. We're going through our own shifts and upgrades, but we're primarily, I mean, people like us are primarily focused on service. So a starseed has been around the block many times, comes to this planet, and in the birth canal, and when you pop out the birth canal, you don't remember, hey, I remember all my lifetimes. I remember being on Sirius, though some children are now. Actually, I've seen children who do remember. And this will increase, but it will only increase to the extent that the vibration of the planet increases, because everything's connected to vibration. The higher the vibration, the more souls can come in with these memories. Yeah. And the more souls will come in with DNA activated and chakras all firing and aura all blazing and all of this kind of thing. But because it's so dense, people like me, I came in the late 50s, so it's been dense and it's been like hard work, slogging and slugging and clearing through the mud. But the ones coming in now, it's a bit, there's a lot of starseeds coming in now who've never been here before. And these are the ones usually who struggle immensely in systems like education. They're the ones being drugged with Ritalin and all this stuff because they are not used to this planet. But people like me have been here before, and I'm used to the density. And I went through the education system, actually quite liking it and not having massive struggles with it, enjoying learning and that kind of thing. So the blessing for a lot of the new starseeds is that they are mostly coming to parents, or at least one parent, usually the mother, who is a starseed. Because if the mother's a starseed, then she can hold the vibration of a higher soul. Otherwise, a 3D mother would tend to miscarry a higher frequency soul. It would be too much for the mother to carry, which is why the whole concept of walk-ins happens, which is another, the idea of walking, a soul walks in and to an existing body because the 3D mother couldn't hold that soul. But that's a whole, some of your listeners will be going, walk-in, oh my God, let me go on Google and Google that one. So that's a whole nother, and I've been through that process. It's not an easy process. It's actually a difficult process to go through. It's almost like it's like a death process, when you're death and rebirth in your body, which was my dark night of the soul. Very difficult, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard this term. I've heard
walk-in soul. Walking. If you Google walk-in soul, you'll hear, it's an old term. Some people have called it transfer student, some walk-in soul. Yeah. It's not a new term. People have been aware of it for a while. Yeah. But apparently I've been through this process. So
yeah, I haven't run into that. Maybe I've experienced it without knowing what to call it. I'll look into that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But I've been feeling like you talk a lot about the density. And what is density? The density of the 3D.
Density. Okay. So if someone who really, I'm imagining I'm speaking to someone who's not really aware of a lot of spiritual terms. So if someone walks into a room where there's been a lot of arguing, a lot of anger, a lot of tension, they may not know there's been a lot of arguing, but they can feel it. Most people can feel it. There's you can cut the atmosphere with a knife. There's these terms. Even a very young or dense soul can usually feel to some degree. Or you walk into a room and someone is angry with you. You don't know why, but you can look at them and you can feel the look and the feel. There's a feel of something's amiss here. That's one level of density. You could say anger is a dense energy. It's not a bad energy because it has its uses. Hatred is a pretty strong, dense energy. Terror and fear are strong energies and dense. You can imagine if you walk into a room where everyone's really frightened or anxious, it's a heavy energy, or angry, it's a heavy energy. If you go into a room where people are meditating mindfully, you might feel, oh, there's a lot of peace in this room. My ex-wife came and visited our house. She gets on very well with me and my ex-partner. My sorry, my partner. My ex-wife gets on well with my partner, and she said this house is very peaceful. Now she is not open spiritually, but she could feel it's very peaceful here.
Mhm.
Um, Imagine going into a room with a lot of laughter. Whoa, I feel uplifted. Or going to a room with a lot of joy, or going to a room and so on. You're going up the scale from terror, shame, anger down the bottom to neutrality, peace,
Mhm.
joy, laughter, bliss.
Mhm.
I'm blissed out, totally blissed out. Um, this is going upscale. If anybody wants to research it, there is a book by David Hawkins,
Mhm.
Power versus Force. And he's talking about the scale of vibration, power versus force.
Mhm.
David, it's either Hawking or Hawkins, I can't remember.
It's Hawkins.
And he says the pivotal point for every being on that scale of moving up the scale is courage, which means, let's say someone's in a very dense marriage, unhappy marriage, or someone's in a very unhappy job. Everyone comes to the place of, I've had enough.
Mhm.
I'm stepping it, which is a place of courage. I'm taking the step of saying, that's enough. I'm resigning. I'm ending. I'm having the conversation, which is difficult. It's a place of courage. And from courage, everything opens upwards,
Mhm.
And so I've been in the marriage, which didn't work in the end. I've been in a 3D corporate job, which I had to walk away from. And all those opened up the whole spectrum of new possibilities. If I'd stayed in a corporate job, I would not have done, there's lots of things I've done over the last 25 years. I wouldn't have been doing this, for
Right.
example. I'd be sitting at some desk paper shuffling or something, getting more and more resentful about, oh, when's my retirement happening? Which is what some people do. I've got two brothers. One's actually retired now, but the other one's waiting. You wait. You're sitting waiting for it to end. This 3D dense job to end.
Mhm.
Fortunately, it ended for me in my 30s, so that was a blessing for me,
That
actually.
was a blessing for you because this is what you're to do. This is what you're doing. You're reaching other. So Starseeds, your work is a wraparound for up and coming starseeds, helping people get connected to who they are. What's your work now?
Yeah, it's mainly aimed at star seeds, people interested in the ascension process, which is again shifting in vibration, the global spiritual awakening. It's for people who think of themselves as light workers. It's for people who want to shift um, and understand things like reality creation. How do so this is one of the shifts from 3D to 4D. How we create our reality. 3D is a place of disempowerment. My boss has the power. My wife has the power.
Mm.
My mother-in-law has the power. 4D, it's like, hey, I can work with energy and I can focus on things that I want to experience. And I can do vision boarding and I can do mantras and I can do mindfulness. That's all 4D stuff.
Mhm.
5D, the shift into 5D is where everything stabilizes. You don't need the props anymore. You're just on the journey. You're just stabilizing in a higher frequency. It's not that you don't have bad days, but it's like the bad day doesn't, you kind of, one of those balls which you try and push under the ocean or in the swimming pool, bounces up. Yes, you can have a bad day, but you can come up quickly.
Mhm.
You don't stay there. You're not complaining, you're not commiserating, you're not in misery, you're not in suffering. You can hear it and empathize with it, but you're not going to, I'm not going to go there.
Yeah,
I wish you the best. I'll help you.
it's a real
Yeah,
perspective change, isn't it?
yeah. You
Yeah.
change perspective, and it's not easy, and people have to go through the whole process of I mean, occasionally some people shift quickly, but a lot of people are processing their ego, processing their belief systems, processing their old stories, shifting the way they look at the world, shifting the idea that there's more possibility. I can change from the
Mhm.
inside out, my reality. And I know a lot of people still in that place that they're working and progressing and they slip back into, no, the world has power. The economy is doing what it's doing. And I try and remind people, actually, you can be free of all of that. You don't have to worry about that. When COVID hit, my business increased 25, 30%, actually.
Mm.
I was in that zone where I'd listened to all my guidance and like, I'm in a great place now. The organization I used to manage, I told them before any of this hit, get everything online as far as possible. They said, yeah, Steve, yeah, we're busy. Don't worry about it. It hit. Oh my God, did they move quickly? As did a lot of organizations. But I got the tip way ahead. I got the tip way back in probably about 2008. Start getting things online a lot more, which is what I did in the old organization and what I'm doing here, which means you're fluid. You can move around the world, and I could be a
Anywhere.
laptop light worker anywhere, really. If I didn't have
Absolutely.
grandchildren, you know,
Fly
I'd
in to
be in
see them.
Bali or somewhere, or Mexico.
Fly them to see you. Fly in to see them.
Yeah.
Take your laptop and go. Be where you want to be.
Mm.
The I'm a learning. One of the hats I've worn in my life is the learning specialist, and I have worked with those individuals that are on the spectrum. Are neurodivergent, ADHD, dyslexia. I'm dyslexic. But I have been saying this for the last several years. It's like, here are our energy workers. When I'm looking at this amazingly talented, gorgeous community, way amazing community, I'm like, these are our light workers. And you said it too. It's like, okay, we're wanting to medicate these light workers. They're not fitting in, but they're our light workers. And it is conversations like these, Steve, that help those that are ready. It's their time to connect to the journey of letting go of whatever karmic and whatever's ready to heal for the whole, but that's their role in this, to connect to that, because they're walking through and seeing the struggle right now. It's like, man, I am overwhelmed by this gift, empathic gift. I am overwhelmed by my senses being so in tuned. Like shark in a tank is overwhelmed. These gifted are overwhelmed. But it's our conversations, and the conversation I'm sure you're having and I'm having, that I really want audience to grab. It's like, hear that if you're feeling these type of overwhelms or this is connecting to you, it's possible that it's saying, there's another perspective to have. We could focus on the struggle, and that's going to keep us in this dense 3D, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or we can say, oh, that's just fuzz. That's just static on the radio. I'm actually here with this incredible purpose to engage in. This is really what this is about.
Yeah. But I think people on the spectrum are struggling with, as you mentioned, overload. It's almost like a lot of them are so sensitive that they have, in England, we have these mind, body, spirit exhibitions. And you go in there, it's like you're sitting in a room or a hall with 20 radio stations playing. There's mantras over there, there's drumming over there, there's something going on there, there's some people here. I even did a talk recently in one of those halls thinking, my goodness, there's 20 different channels and I've got to get this audience to focus on me. And this is what a lot of these people are struggling. All of these channels are opening. And for a lot of people on the spectrum, they're struggling with sensory overload from the world, sensory overload from the family, because often these kids are pressure valve release points for family stuff that families are not facing themselves, are not willing to look at, don't want to look at. So in my family, I've got two brothers. I went through therapy for 13 years, and they were like looking at me going, what's the problem? Why are you looking at all this stuff? Go and sit on the beach, drink a pina colada and be happy. Why can't you be happy? And they're like oblivious to it. And I'm the one going, oh my God, I'm feeling all this stuff in this family. The other thing is they're dealing with ancestral stuff. The ancestral programs, again, they're sensitive to. I had one friend of mine who come from a family, and she went through a very heavy period of crying intensely daily. She actually worked in the organization as a volunteer that I was at, and she was crying, and she actually went through a bit of a breakdown for a while. And she said to me one day, "Why am I having to process everything for my family? Why can't they do it?" And then, well, they're not going to do it. You're the one. And this is what happens with people on this, but they may not have the language for it. They may be so overwhelmed with all this stuff, you know. And so there are all these different radio stations, and gradually they're learning to tune them out, and gradually learning to deal with energy and actually bounce off, you know, turn down the stations, turn down the volume, um, protect their energy, strong energy boundaries, not having, you know, Swiss cheese like energy boundaries where things just come in and, you know, and also, you know, it may not apply for people on the spectrum, but certainly people with mental health issues. You know, if you've ever mental health institutions where people are talking to themselves, they are not talking to themselves. They are talking to beings often that are there talking to them, that the doctors then medicate and switch them off. Now, a lot of these beings that they're talking to are not particularly nice beings, or they're not particularly enlightened beings. Usually, they're pretty trapped beings. So, and they don't know how to get rid of them or to release them. So it's this is the problem that, you know, the medical science is all about. Yes, we have talk therapies which can be useful, but there's no real understanding of energetic
Yeah.
technique or shifting or working. Talk therapies are great up to a point. I think they're really useful, but they're slow. So I did 13 years of talk therapy, great for building a foundation of self-awareness, but slow. The moment I found the spiritual world, I let go of that world. But I realized that it took me 6 months to let go of it completely. I knew it was a bit of a crutch for me. Oh, can I let go of it? Will I be all right without my counselor or my therapist? Or so there is that kind of crutch. But when I did let go finally, I did begin to fly. So yeah, so people on the spectrum, it's energy management, turning down the volume of the sensory overload. And, you know, that's a process really for a lot of people. It's not easy. It's a
Yeah.
set of
Totally
skills.
agree. But it's really a window into how gifted. That's like a superpower to be that into. Now figure out how to navigate that and work with it. But what a superpower that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
What in your we're coming up on our time. I don't want to, and so I want to ask you, what do you wish people would ask you?
Oh, what do I wish people would ask me? Um, well, I suppose the impression people get is that, so Steve, you're clearly completely sorted, aren't you? You know, you're doing this work, you've managed to find your life's work, you're with the partner you're meant to be with, um, and you know, clearly you can do this laptop thing, you can go anywhere. So you don't have any challenges, do you? But of course,
Hmm.
yes. I know the thing about the spiritual path is at the beginning of the spiritual path, where people find the Reiki workshops and the crystals and all of these things and affirmations, the promise is that by embracing this, your life will get better. And that promise is by and large true. Your life does get better. You begin to manage things better. But what you don't get to be told is the further down the path you go, the more you face the real nitty gritty in your being and ancestral stuff and other lifetime stuff. And the layers of the onion, when you start peeling away, you know, this lifetime stuff, some of it is like, whoa,
Mhm.
what's happened there? What have I been up to? You
Yeah.
know, galactic wars and, you know, inquisitions and burned as a witch. And like, you know, that was one memory I had in mid 90s of being burnt as a witch. Very intense, you know. And these can be a bit overwhelming at the beginning, like, oh my God, I'm dealing with my present life. And now I've got to deal with ancestral
Mhm.
programming and I've got to deal with being burnt as a witch or being in some galactic war. And that's the pro. So actually, the further down you go, there's more juggling and clearing to do. But of course, life does get easier and more magical, but you're still clear. I'm still clearing.
Yeah.
It's not ending. It's an ongoing process. And I need to do it for myself so that if I'm doing it for myself, I can then create these transmissions and programs to help others. If I was completely, hey, I'm sorted. Well, how do I help the world? I don't know. You should be sorted. So I have to actually go through it myself and clear and go, oh my God, I think that's going to help a lot of people. Let's put that out. So everything I'm posting is stuff that I'm actually going through. So I'm in the washing machine myself
I love to
constantly.
hear that. I love to hear that because I've often asked myself, okay, seriously, how much junk can be in here? Like seriously, really?
Yeah,
Because it is a process. It is if you sign up and you want to, because it's voluntary, right? It's
yeah,
voluntary. You don't have to. But if you choose to, for that greater good, you're gonna see stuff.
yeah.
I was disemboweled as a witch on the streets of Ireland somewhere. And I
Mm.
saw it and I felt it, and we went back and we healed it. But it is intense,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
intense. And but thank you for saying that. It's a journey, but it's about healing for the collective. What you're getting to do, what we're getting to do is we're getting to be in it. And then what we're speaking to, this is what I heard you say, correct me if I've totally got it wrong, but is you're in it, the potency of the truth of it is there as well. And that is energy. And as you're supporting people at that level, it's not beginner stuff that you're working on. It's
Mm-mm.
when you're at that level, the potency of your experience resonates to those that are also in those spaces. And then that really makes you this incredible coach because
Yeah.
you're and working through it.
Well, I think that's the alchemy, isn't it? That I think every coach or healer or therapist can only take their clients as far as they've gone. And so I'm still on the journey, still dealing with this alchemy in myself, this potency, which means, I mean, a lot of the comments I get back from YouTube and all this is, oh my goodness, that was so intense. One woman recently said, I went and vomited in. It's not often the case, but one person said it recently. And it's because it's so real and intense in people's fields that they're feeling it. It's
Mhm.
not like I'm putting up, okay, visualize a unicorn, get on the unicorn's back, go for a ride through the magical land, come back, well, Zam, you're feeling joyful now. And it's like people, there are a lot of those kind of things around, but I'm not doing that,
Mhm.
which is lovely visualizations where you can feel better.
Mhm.
But this is like what's alive in your being, what needs to come up, what needs to be put in the washing machine and cleansed and released, and that's the work, really. No getting around it. And there are some people, of course, not ready for it. So, but there's lots of lovely ones, self-love meditation. So there's a whole gamut of things. It's not like everyone you're going in the washing machine. Some of them are inviting angels of light just to shift you beautifully. I mean, there has to be a kind of spectrum of, oh, I need a really light and lovely one now, please, and then, oh, I can go back in the washing machine now and deal with galactic wars or Inquisition or whatever it is. So it's this kind of progression. Going up the mountain, we still need to rest, have a cup of tea
Yeah.
before we can get to the top or to the bottom, whichever way we're going.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Good balance. And so for people that are wanting to find a whole spectrum of support, they can find you. We're going to provide your website so they can connect to you
yeah,
and get
thesoulmatrix.com.
absolutely. And in the chat here, you guys can grab it as well. And it is you get that. You get the meditations. You have just a whole library, if you will, of different supports and trainings and teachings that people can plug into, as well as the books that you have personally written.
Yeah.
So, whoop, kudos to you.
Ooh,
That's awesome. So we're excited to bring and connect you with our audience here today. There's just levels and levels of wisdom and insight that you've been able to put together for people. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Steve.
pleasure.
And you also gave us, the audience, a free PDF of an ebook called Starseeds. So you want to kind of
Yeah.
tell us about that?
Woo. I wrote that in 2016 when I had lots of time and a few clients. And now it's the reverse. I've got lots of clients, lots of workshops, lots of things, and less time. So since writing that book, um, I think it might be, well, it's certainly under 50 pages, I think. It's had about 140 to 150,000 downloads. So it's been a popular read. So I think people can buy it on Amazon for £2.50 or something, but you get it for free on my website. So you don't need to save £2.50
There you
or
go.
whatever it is. Yeah.
Go out for a coffee and read your book.
Yeah. Have a coffee on me.
Yep. Beautiful. Well, thank you again for joining us here at Table Talk, sharing your wisdom and experience. It's been a delight.
Thanks, Janelle.
Wow, wasn't that a great conversation and great information that Steve, through his years of experience, was able to share? He's got a perspective of time and being in the intuitive world and understanding energy, walking with starseeds and developing different courses to support the starseeds as they are merging. If you've been wondering what your gifts are you a starseed? Are you an intuitive? Maybe you're empathic, but how do I deal with that? I also want to drop in my link here to look at the my website because we have lots of supports for understanding who am I as an energy healer, as an empath, or maybe you're curious, am I any of these? There's a link also to schedule a call. And if you're curious and you want to know, let's have a chat. It's free to you, 30 minutes where we can sit down and take a look at that together or strategies to support as you may be feeling overwhelmed in this shift of energy as a planet. The energy's hot, if you will, and big. So if you're an empath, that could be blowing your circuits. So let's get you some tools that allow you to regulate that, navigate that, understand what it means to you, and so much more. So there's a lot of resources out there for you as an empath. Let's support you and help you. So glad you were here again. We'll see you at the next Table Talk. Thank you for being here. And if you like this video and you got value from this video, hit the like, subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell so you get notified that the next one is live. See you at our next Table Talk.